Hello, today I want to talk a little bit about Martin McDonagh's Beauty Queen of Leenane, a play that McDonagh himself wrote in about 7 days and would actually launch him as a significant figure on theatrical stages around the world. Beauty Queen of Leenane, though, was a bit of a trip for us as readers and also as viewers of the play by extension, because of the fact that we're really not sure what we're supposed to do with this play. Like, how are we supposed to react to it? How are we supposed to feel as a result of the things that we see on the stage? And it's a good example of what's called a dark comedy, which these type of comedies, by definition, they deal with the absurd and the morbid in order to get their humor across. And Martin McDonagh deals with both of those things in abundance. For example, the absurdity of someone throwing a tantrum because his tennis ball has been stolen, to cats that pee in the sink, to old women who flush their pee down the sink rather than in the toilet. Certainly there's a variety of absurd humor that goes on here, and a variety of toilet humor that probably would make someone like Adam Sandler just kind of click his teeth together in joy. And also we have the morbid that goes along with it. For example, the threats of dumping lumpy Compline over Mag's head, to the torturing of Mag with boiling oil, and then ultimately the brutal killing of Mag where half of her skull is taken off with a black poker. That's a pretty morbid way to die, and it's sort of horrifying to us in a variety of ways because we expect that sort of thing on a movie screen, but in a theatrical production we may be taken a little bit aback by it. And undoubtedly, viewers of the play initially were. This is not the type of thing you wind up seeing happening on the stage. Usually, the cruel punishments and whatnot would take place off stage. So McDonagh broke a lot of grounds with that in terms of the nature of the violence that's depicted in the play, and there's a whole variety of playwrights that would wind up doing something similar. But our sort of struggle with identifying with this play reinforces a larger issue that's going on with that, and that's issues of identity. And I want to talk about a couple of things in regard to that. And sort of identity and the way that we define ourselves is based upon the sum of our experiences. So different characteristics that we have, different experiences that we have, all really help to define us for who we are. And the characters that we encounter in Beauty Queen of Leenane, what I want to suggest to you is that they don't have fully formed identities, at least not fully formed identities for us to be able to draw a firm conclusion about who these individuals are, because McDonagh gives us mixed signals about them. So when we first meet a character, we may be inclined to feel one way about them. And then as the story unfolds, our attitude towards the character might change, and we might feel the exact opposite about them. So what I want to do first is I want to take our four main characters and sort of break down what McDonagh does and does not tell us about them, and also maybe not give you a correct way of reading the characters, but allow you to see that the characters can be perceived in a variety of different perspectives. So let's start with the beauty queen herself, Maureen. Now, when we first meet Maureen, we're probably going to be inclined to empathize with her, because we see this 40-year-old woman who is stuck in a cabin out in the middle of nowhere at the top of a steep hill, and she's taking care of her mother, who appears initially to be a little bit on the senile side. And we're treated to Mag bossing Maureen around, and there is no one to help Maureen, and Mag is unwilling to help Maureen. So we might be inclined to sympathize with her. Oh, poor Maureen, and that mother who is just trying to repress her spirit. Now, as the play goes along, we're given some more information about Maureen, and we see her act out against Mag on several occasions. Of course, we see Mag interfere with the message that Ray was going to give to Maureen, and then Maureen threatens to dump lumpy Compline over her head if she doesn't cough up the truth. We may be able to say, haha, that's kind of funny to imagine someone getting lumpy Compline dumped over their head. And you may say, well, what is Compline anyway? Well, it's a dietary supplement, and particularly for people who have problems with doing their business in the bathroom, they would typically have Compline so that it would help to sustain them. Think Metamucil. So imagine having lumpy Metamucil dumped over your head. The image is kind of funny, and maybe I say, haha, that would be kind of funny to actually see Mag with lumpy Compline running off of her hair. But as it goes along from there, we also wind up finding out that Maureen has had a little bit of a stint in a place called Difford Hall. For a period of time, she was away from Leenane, and she's been over in England, and she doesn't handle the situation in England very well. And we find out Difford Hall is basically an insane asylum. And Maureen makes up the reason when she's trying to explain this away to Pato that, well, she just had a little bit of a breakdown and the society just kind of got to her. And hey, we all have a little bit of a breakdown every once and again, so what is the big deal? And it kind of reminds me of a line in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, in which in the scene where Anthony Perkins is Norman Bates, he's having a private conversation with Marion, who we think is the main character in the film until she's dispatched halfway through it, about how his mother was very dominating over him, but she's not really a bad person because everyone gets mad every once in a while and everyone goes a little bit crazy. And of course, those of you who are familiar with Psycho know that Norman Bates is as crazy as the Mad Hatter, that he's poisoned his mother and her intended future husband. And to go along with that, he has now a dual personality. One side of him is mother, and then the other side is Norman Bates. So he winds up proving that he is Psycho, and he is really the character who gives Psycho its name. And it's kind of strange to then hear Maureen echo something similar. So maybe a warning flag goes up because, I might have a bad day, you might have a bad day, but we're probably not going to wind up being in a local mental hospital because we've had a bad day and we've had a little bit of a breakdown. Usually, some time away, a little vacation, or a stiff drink of something, and we're able to get over our bad day. Apparently that's not the case for Maureen, so maybe that sends up a little bit of a signal flag for us. And of course, later on, we see her physically torturing her mother and then killing her mother on stage. And we have to wonder, well, should we still be empathizing with her, or should we now be empathizing with Mag? After all, does Mag do anything so horrible that it could possibly justify her torture and murder in the second act of the play? Then by the end of the play, Maureen has actually become Mag. There she is, sitting in a rocking chair, listening to the long-distance dedication that they've been waiting forever for Mag to come in, and mixing up Ray's name in the same way that Mag used to do it. So you have to wonder, what am I supposed to make of this character? Am I supposed to empathize with her? Am I supposed to trust her? And then, the other point I didn't mention is that she makes stuff up. For example, that entire encounter that she has with Pato after she gets done torturing Mag. Before she leaves, and this is the clue that she made it up, probably a lot of you, when you read it for the first time, you took it right at face value and then were shocked when Ray revealed afterwards that no such encounter had ever happened. At the end of that scene, she specifically tells Mag, if you've made me miss Pato, you'll really be in for it when I get back. And no fooling around this time. Well, my gosh, she just tortured her mother with boiling oil. If that really wasn't in for it, what could it possibly be? Clearly, it's the murder that happens afterwards. Mag wouldn't have been murdered if she had met Pato. That's really being in for it. So she makes things up as she goes along. And then, at the end of that scene, when she's talking to Mag's corpse, which is swaying back and forth in the rocking chair, and then, of course, gratuitously falls on the floor with half of the skull missing, she then starts talking about how she's going to come up with a cover story. It was over the stile she did trip. Aye. And down the hill she did fall. Aye. Aye. See, what she's doing is in her mind she's recreating her alibi. So she's not telling the truth. How can we trust her? As readers, we don't have a firm sense of Maureen's true identity. We have bits and pieces and fragments of her character, and in our own way we have to make sense out of whether or not we like this character, we trust this character, or even should we care about this character. Maybe this character does belong in Difford Hall. Then we have Mag we have to deal with. And of course, when we first meet her, we're probably annoyed by her, because there she is talking about how she needs a soup, and she's got a bad back, and she's got a bad hand, and she's dumping pee down the sink. There's not a lot of reasons to like Mag. And of course, she winds up interfering twice with Maureen's relationship with Pato. The first time, of course, she manipulates Ray. She knows how to push every single one of his buttons to get him to leave and to write his message down on a piece of paper, which she subsequently throws into the fire. Now, you might be inclined to say, well, she's senile, and she says she doesn't remember Ray's name. She's constantly mixing him up with Pato, and okay, so she's out of her mind. But you notice that she's cold and calculating as well. She knows how to manipulate Ray. She does it twice in basically sister scenes. The first time is the example that I just mentioned, where she tricks Ray into writing the message down and then burns it. And then the second act of the play, when Ray is given very specific instructions from Pato to put the letter in Maureen's hand, Mag pushes all of Ray's buttons to get him out of there so that she can burn the letter a second time, right? As readers, we're probably prepared for her to duplicate her success in the first act. Now, if she's really senile, is she really going to wait to hear Ray's footsteps going down the path before she gets up and strategically and methodically reads the letter, commits it to memory, and then burns it? And how do we know she commits it to memory? Because she teases Maureen later on about the fact that Maureen and Pato didn't have sex, even though Maureen suggests that, in fact, they did have sex. And the only way that Mag could have been privy to that information would have been to have read the letter, which she denies having. And then, of course, we know it's the boiling of oil and the screaming of Mag, then the truth winds up coming out. So as a reader, we can't really buy into the fact that she's senile, because clearly there's evidence that shows that she's not. So what is the deal with Mag? Well, you also have to wonder why it is that she stays with Maureen. I mean, she's being brutalized, and from the very beginning of the play, we know that she's been tortured by Maureen previously. Remember, it's very early on when she starts mentioning me bad hand. And from the description we get of her, it's identified by McDonagh that one hand is noticeably more red than the other. So the scene that we see later of Maureen torturing Mag is not the first time that it happens. This is a pattern of abuse. And Mag is a battered mother. And she's staying with Maureen for reasons that aren't quite clear. She says repeatedly in the play, well, who's going to take care of me? We look at that in a superficial way, and, well, Maureen is not taking care of Mag at all. She's horrible to her. So Mag doesn't want to be in a nursing home. So in her mind, it's better to be with Maureen and be abused than be in a nursing home. Well, that's one possible way of looking at it. Here's something else to consider, and this may have been something that you hadn't thought about Mag. You know, she works her hardest to prevent Pato and Maureen from actually being together. And you have to wonder why. Well, is it just for the fact that Mag wants Maureen to stay with her and abuse her for the rest of her life? Or is she actually trying to save Pato? After all, she knows that Maureen had this breakdown, and that this breakdown was something a little bit more than just a bad day or her needing a little bit of a rest. She had to sign papers to get her daughter out of Difford Hall. And trusting Maureen into the care of the mother, the institution lets her go. So you have to wonder, is Mag really indirectly protecting Pato? And by keeping Maureen in that cottage, is she indirectly protecting the rest of the world from the psychopath that is Maureen? Now, to get back to Maureen for a moment, we may ask a question of, well, does Maureen actually become insane as the play goes along, or is she already there? The fact that Mag has been tortured previously by her suggests that the psychosis that we see Maureen demonstrate in the play is not created by the events in the play. It's created by events that have happened prior to the play even beginning. So, does Maureen become more psychotic as the play unfolds? We can't say definitively. Maybe yes, maybe no. You can only kill someone once. Maybe that's the proof that she does actually significantly change as a result of the events that have happened. Now let's look at the two guys. All right, Pato, when we meet him, he's a drunken mess. And before running into the beauty queen of Leenane, as he calls Maureen, he has his hands all over that Dolores Hooly Healy girl, and of course no one seems to remember her name accurately either, and I'm going to come back to that point before I wrap up on this presentation. Pato, of course, we discover, has not had intimate relations with Maureen, and he's embarrassed by that. We have this lovely letter at the beginning of the second act in which he discloses his emotions, and he talks around the bush a lot. It's a very humble letter. And as a reader, we have to maybe treat that with a little bit of skepticism. Because, of course, he talks about how it's happened to him before, that sometimes he's had too much to drink, and that he's just not able to perform. So you have to wonder, why is it that Pato is so very fascinated with Maureen? He says that he loves her and offers to bring her to America, which is significant in and of itself. However, you also have to wonder, is this someone who is just trying to make it right in the bedroom so that he can have another check mark on his list? Because he marries that Hooly Healy girl and runs off to America with her pretty quickly and seems to recover from Maureen rather fast. Now, we also have to be fair to Pato, because after that letter, which we see him write, we never actually physically see him in the play again. So again, we don't have a firm resolution to that. We don't have Pato coming back at the end of the play and saying goodbye to Maureen. There is no final goodbye. He just literally disappears from the play itself. And as readers, we're left wondering, well, what really happened with Pato? Again, we don't know. That's what I mean by an incomplete identity. As readers, we have to kind of draw upon sort of key pieces of evidence that we see unfolding and try to reach a conclusion that best satisfies us. Now, Ray is an interesting character because out of all of them, I think he's probably the most consistent one. And he's actually in a state of redefining himself. Right? We hear from Mag that Ray had previously been a choir boy, and of course he bristles at the fact that he was a choir boy because he says, of course, you don't meet women if you're a choir boy, because who wants to be climbing into bed with a choir boy? It makes him seem like a goody-goody. So he talks about how he likes to go to discos, and it's suggested that he's into drugs. Maureen kind of chastises him at the end about getting involved with drugs. And then to go along with that, he wants to buy the black poker off of Mag, ironically the same black poker that winds up killing Mag, and he wants to use that to go around clobbering coppers. He wants to go around beating up the police. And we see the damage that the poker does to Mag. Can you imagine Ray with a black poker going after the cops? That's not going to end in a positive way for either a copper or for Ray. So certainly there's someone who is a very, very angry. He comes across as a consistently angry individual with the way that he curses so frequently, with the way that he disrespects Mag to her face, and she's totally okay with that because she's pushing his buttons anyway, and even the way he talks to Maureen at the end when he discovers that his swing ball has been taken. Of course, we have to wonder what's really going on with Ray. To go along with that, he gets really mad when he gets called Pato. Is he angry with his brother? Why is he angry with his brother? And we never see the two of them on stage together, so we have no idea what that brotherly dynamic is even like in the first place. So again, we're left scratching for a definitive conclusion about Ray, even though he's probably the most consistent character. He's consistently angry, he's consistently rude, he consistently curses, and he consistently has violence on his mind. We can at least identify with him, understand him a little bit more easily or readily than Maureen and Mag, who are much more complex and sophisticated characters. Now, in addition to characters with not fully formed identities, there are also some larger issues with identity that McDonagh hits upon throughout the course of the play. For example, the inability to remember names. It's Dolores Healy or Dolores Hooley. No one seems to know, and she's apparently all not that much important because they don't remember her last name. Likewise, Father Walsh versus Father Welsh. I mean, which is it? What is his actual name? Right? Mag and Ray have a go around with that. So the inability to remember people's names, and even Ray being called Pato. Again, lack of identity. People are not properly identified by who they are in society. There's also a cultural identity thing that's going on in this play as well. Recall early in the play when Mag and Maureen are having a conversation about speaking Irish in Ireland and that they shouldn't be speaking English. It seems like a bunch of gibberish nonsense, but there's a lot of information in this play about the relationship between the Irish and the English. And first of all, Maureen gets it wrong. There's no such language as Irish, it's Gaelic. And of course, it's pretty much an extant language. I mean, you walk around Ireland today and they're all speaking English. And what McDonagh is getting at, and certainly what Maureen in her own sort of warped way is trying to kind of come around to the fact, is that the Irish identity is being stolen and replaced by the British. And both Maureen and Pato, and something that they have in common, have gone to England for work, because there is no work in Leenane. And as a result of that, both of them are treated horribly by the British because of the fact that they're Irish. Their cultural identity causes problems for them and causes them to want to distance themselves from it. Pato seems to sum it up best when he says, when I'm in England, it's not there that I want to be. And when I'm in Leenane, it's not here that I want to be. Neither place is desirable. So being in Ireland and being part of the Irish cultural identity is not desirable. Trying to become part of the British identity is not desirable either because the people won't let him do that. So the end result is a sense of alienation that stems from an inability to consistently sustain one's cultural identity. Subtle details in the play, and they're obscured by the fact that we have these complex character relationships going on, but don't overlook it, because it reinforces the idea that it becomes next to impossible for individuals within a society to develop fully formed identities when they don't have the right social backing to be able to help support and sustain and nurture said identity. And sort of one final piece to consider about that. As we look at the way that these characters interact with each other and we see where they ultimately want to go, they want to go to America. America is where it's at. So I don't want to be Irish. I don't want to be English. I want to be American. And that's even emphasized by the picture of the Kennedys that's hanging on the cottage wall. Again, it's a little detail, but McDonagh is very, very specific about that particular picture. Of course, the Kennedys were Irish, and there's a sense of Irish pride that goes along with that. And of course, ironically, both of the Kennedys pictured there were murdered, just as Mag is murdered. So in this play, there's a lot that has to do with identity. And it comes up in a variety of ways, from the characters not really being able to fit into the society to a cultural identity that's being stifled by an outside force. Right? The Beauty Queen of Leenane, a dark comedy, has a lot to say about social structures and politics and the relationship that two societies that have hated each other for centuries, right? And the way that they still continue to struggle to interact with each other even today as we move into the 21st century.